After the fantastic response Battle of Gods received across the world, one of the small tidbits of criticism that the film received was that there wasn't enough fighting from characters other than Goku. People thought that too much time had been spent on comedy and, well, they just kinda wanted more punching. And boy, did they get it with the next one. Over the last few months, as I'm sure many of you know, I've watched and reviewed pretty much every Dragon Ball film that's been released to date. And through the ups and downs of this journey, surfing through boring recycled plot points, rushed fight scenes, and weird Deus Ex Machina endings, I have now found myself on the doorstep of my last big review. 2015's Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F. One of the strangest paced, oddly focused, and wishy-washy films from the modern Dragon Ball catalog. One that people really didn't talk about that much because Dragon Ball Super's anime began pretty much right after its release. I have seen this movie, but not for years, and I wanted to get a sense of how the community still felt towards it. And so, I asked on Twitter, of the 3 modern Dragon Ball movies, which of them do you think was the worst? By an absolute landslide with over 18,000 votes cast, Resurrection F was the clear majority holder with 82% of the total votes. Not a fantastic response from the fans, but let's see how it fares with me. Today, I am diving in-depth reviewing one of the most criticized Dragon Ball films from the modern age. Today, I will be taking a look back at Akira Toriyama's Resurrection F. Something of interest, this is the first film from Toei and Dragon Ball that had a script written entirely by Akira Toriyama. Someone that has had experience writing his story from Dragon Ball in the past with the help of editors for his manga, but this is the first time he has written a feature-length, self-contained story in script form. And unfortunately, I think it shows. The film itself opens, I think, quite strong, dealing specifically with the circumstances that led to the resurrection of the Big F himself, Frieza, and the subsequent consequences of that decision. The dialogue here tries to create a sense of continuity out of retroactivity, similar to how Battle of Gods tried to establish Beerus as part of Dragon Ball's history, this time through characters like Sorbet and his subordinates as they attempt to locate New Namek and inform Frieza of the Super Saiyan. Their reasons for pursuing Earth's Dragon Balls are believable and make sense within the lore of the show. Everything that happens leading up to and including the resurrection of Frieza makes a remarkable amount of sense when you consider that all of this is happening retroactively without any prior planning or thought. Once Frieza is resurrected, the dialogue that he delivers is absolutely pitch perfect for his character. Something to be expected when you consider this was written by Akira Toriyama himself. He's delightfully menacing, and it's all great until I hear this line. A line that, when I hear it now, is the first sign of Akira Toriyama's inexperience when it comes to structuring a story for a film.
しかし、孫悟空というサイヤ人は、
何ですか？さらに強くなっているということですか?
Some of you might be thinking that with this line I am taking issue with Frieza's ability to get stronger than Goku in such a short amount of time. I'm really not. I'm actually not bothered by that at all. What I personally take issue with here is what it sets up and ultimately fails to deliver upon. At this point in the film, the entire story has been about Frieza and his resurrection. The first 18 minutes, in fact. And what's more is that when faced with a great foe to overcome and a massive obstacle to defeat, Frieza accepts the call to action. The call to action is something the main character of a film does before they embark upon a journey to improve themselves in order to overcome the goal of the film. This movie's first act is written such that Frieza is the main character, but the rest isn't written that way at all. And here is where the movie starts to fall apart and ultimately begins setting up the building blocks to its own destruction. The following selection of scenes somewhat acts as a secondary first act for the rest of the characters, Krillin, Bulma, Piccolo, Gohan, etc., until we finally are reintroduced to the new main characters of the movie, Goku and Vegeta. Watching Goku and Vegeta train under Whis is something I enjoy and still do to a certain extent in this film. However, as I've made clear in another video discussing this very scene with Whis, I don't buy that Goku is overconfident remotely, and to suggest that him letting his guard down is an example of that is flat out wrong when you look back at Goku's history in the manga. Whis goes on to demonstrate Goku's overconfidence by punching him in the ribs while he is off guard in a non-combative situation. This only serves to prove that he doesn't have Ultra Instinct, which Whis is training him towards, doesn't share Vegeta's weakness of constantly being on guard, and is just weaker than Whis. All things that are either good, neutral, or we already already know. It's a pointless interaction and serves to prove nothing. 33 minutes have passed in the film at this point, and there's an hour left. This is when the action begins and doesn't stop. You may have noticed at this point that there's been an incredibly long set of first acts, and you'd be right. This is where the issue I had with establishing Frieza as the main character comes crashing down. When a character accepts the call to action, the second act is typically spent watching that character overcome obstacles in their way in order to reach the level they need to be able to take on the main threat to them at the end. In the case of this film, that threat is Goku. Infinity War with Thanos is structured that way. Typical hero films are structured that way, much like in Star Wars A New Hope. But Resurrection F isn't. Instead, because Akira Toriyama doesn't want Frieza to be redeemable in the slightest, he skips over all of his struggles in training and moves straight to Act 3, doing the exact same with Goku and Vegeta. But you can't jump straight from Act 1 to Act 3, so in the middle, instead of putting worthwhile story progression like 99% of films would, he instead opts to fill it with the most meaningless fight sequences ever put to film. The Z Warriors versus the Frieza Force. And first, let me say, because I know you're going to have comments saying at least they gave these characters something to do, if you give a character something to do in the story, that is not good for the character unless what they do means something within the story. If all they do is show up, clean up some grunts, and do nothing else, in the context of this movie where the second act means literally nothing, they become something much more akin to halftime show entertainment and not the respected characters they should be. In other words, sometimes being given trash material to work with is more damaging than nothing at all. Now, with that said, there are some neat action moments here and there from them, but as I'm sure you're aware by now, I don't care about Flash unless it has substance behind it. If I was to stretch for any utility this scene offered to the entire story, it's that it provided Goku with a coordinate to lock onto to join the action. In other words, the best these guys can do is offer a GPS signal for the main characters, the real heroes. But hey, at least they're included in the film, right? Don't make me laugh. So with all that preamble out of the way, it's time we dig into the main course, the final act of the film, the fight. Goku versus Frieza.
Go on. Channel that Super Saiyan glow I hate so much.
This is one of my least enjoyed final fights from the entire series, but that's not to say I don't enjoy elements of it here and there. I did enjoy the initial flurry Goku and Frieza experienced while shrouded in light. I thought the plumes of smoke with their purple and white auras flying upwards was a striking and effective image. And I thought the most interesting animation sequences of the film came from some explosion effects work as Vegeta defended the onlookers from Frieza's deflected energy blast, and the 3D work that led into the 1-inch punch later in the film from Goku. Speaking of CGI, while I don't think this film had the worst 3D implementation in the modern movies, that distinction goes to Battle of Gods, I definitely think Resurrection F's isn't very good either. You can tell they tried to blend 2D animation and 3D hoping for a more seamless result, and while it's less jarring overall for sure, I can still tell the instant it shifts from 2D to 3D and then back to 2D. But that's certainly not the biggest issue this fight has to contend with. Personally, I'm of the opinion that the addition of characters like Beerus and Whis affect the overall tension of a fight scene just by existing on screen during it. But if a fight is structured correctly and the camera is kept off of them for long enough, then it's possible to achieve wonderfully engaging action sequences with tension. And you need look no further than the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie from 2018. Whis isn't seen until the very end when he is distracting Broly, and at that point Gogeta is already there and Broly doesn't stand a chance against him anyway. And so, while keeping that in mind, remember when I said I loved the 1-inch punch from Goku? This is what the director decided to cut to immediately after the blow was dealt to Frieza. And while we're on the topic of poorly chosen visuals, this film's animation director was Tadayoshi Yamamuro at his most unimaginative. The beauty of Dragon Ball, and animation in general really, is that you're free to experiment with as many different angles, ideas, set pieces, and sequences as your heart desires. You're only limited by your own imagination. This Goku vs Frieza fight has some of the most boring and uninspired sequences of action animation I've seen come from a main fight in the series. Look at how many times a character is sent through a cliff in this movie. And that's not even including all the times a character was thrown into the water. As I've said prior, there are some nice visuals in the form of animated sequences within the film, most notably from Yuki Hayashi and Kudai Watanabe, with even some Yuya Takahashi sprinkled in for good measure. But even these admittedly bright spots are but a flicker of light amidst a bleak and dismal backdrop, demonstrating an unimaginably boring storyboard as well as a color palette that makes Charlie Chaplin's most early work look like a laser light rave party. And what's more is I haven't even gotten to what I dislike most about this movie yet. I'm not sure how controversial this stance I'm about to make is, but here it goes anyway. I think Super Saiyan Blue is the worst transformation unveiling in the entire series, and it completely misses the point of this narrative tool entirely. Transformation is supposed to, or ought to I think, be used to demonstrate more than just a physical change in the character, at least when it comes to main characters anyway. The entire point of all the successful and memorable transformations from the main cast in the series has been how their mind and body has changed as a result of their transformation. With Super Saiyan Blue, it's just a physical change, just thrown into the movie with all the passion and enthusiasm of a 40-something working in customer service, carrying with it the same lack of emotional weight transformations like Puar and Oolong perform. Oh, but they don't count because they don't look nearly as cool. It's not just about looking cool. If that's all there was to it, then transformations from the likes of Zarbon, Frieza, and Majin Buu would have been just as hype and emotionally charged as Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan's legendary transformations were. But they weren't. Super Saiyan Blue just shows up, and it sucks. And I'm not saying it sucks because I don't think it looks cool. I think it does look cool. Something can look cool and still suck, the exact same way something can look awful but still be great. And speaking of things that are awful, I've yet to talk about the most heavily criticized part of this film.
Oh my god, this is happening again.
That's right. You're not dealing with the average Saiyan warrior anymore, Frieza.
One of the biggest criticisms of the last film was how small Vegeta's part was to play compared to Goku's. And I think this film did give Vegeta a more significant role, so to speak. What I mean by that is, his role has much greater consequence and stakes compared to the first of these films. In Battle of Gods, he was very much the character that carried a substantial amount of the story's comedic moments and supplied little in the way of action, despite those action tidbits he did provide being some of the most memorable from the film. But once Goku shows up to face Beerus, he becomes very much a background character the same way others like Krillin are. In Resurrection F, they remedy this by making him the fake-out last stand against Frieza. Once again, not delivering much in the way of fighting, perhaps even less than in Battle of Gods, but this time there's much more emotional weight behind every punch, and it's all the more satisfying for that, given his history with Frieza long ago and the fact that we now know Goku can't jump in to steal the spotlight like he did in Battle of Gods. This decision, I genuinely have no idea what they thought the reaction was going to be. It's paced as if it was trying to be a meme. The part of the film, this scenario is mapped out such that Vegeta has to take the L and have Goku save the day. It's a completely aimless and vapid ending. And that's this film really in a nutshell. Aimless. The film begins with a series of scenes that act as a perfect introduction to Frieza as the point of view main character, but then it quickly switches to Goku and Vegeta. It sets up what they have to work on for the movie, one of which being to the detriment of Goku later in the film. Frieza becomes a large focus of the film once again towards the middle and the end before switching back to Goku and Vegeta once again, neither of whom learn anything during its runtime. Which leads me to perhaps this movie's most glaring issue for me personally. Once this film ends, nothing is different. Everything is how it once was. Goku and Vegeta are still perfectly fine, alive, and training away to their heart's content. No one died except for Frieza, who was already dead in the first place. You could cut this entire thing out and all that would be lost is the knowledge that Whis can rewind time, which could be explained in the span of 3 seconds anyway. It's the perfect example of terrible long-term story writing. If I were to place this alongside the other older Dragon Ball films, I would have said that this is an okay film with some significant downsides. But because this is a canon part of an ongoing story, I can't help but feel like I wasted 90 minutes of my life with stuff that largely irritated me. But what do you think? Do you think it's fair 82% of Dragon Ball fans think Resurrection F is the weakest film? Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to rate this video and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. As always, I've been Totally Not Mark. Thank you so much for watching.